You ever wake up in the middle of the night to find two police officers standing over you, shining flashlights in your face telling you you're under arrest for sleeping on land your own grandfather carved out of the prairie? Yeah, that happened to me. And that's how I found out the HOA was trying to erase 80 years of my family's sweat, blood, and history just so they could build themselves a shiny new clubhouse. Let me back up a sec. It was supposed to be a simple weekend, 48 hours out by the lake, no phones, no bad news, just me, a campfire, and the sound of crickets under a sky full of stars, right where 3 generations of Northwoods have come to find peace. Instead, I got yanked out of my sleeping bag and hit with a charge of criminal trespass on my own land. According to the officer with the clipboard and the badge, the HOA owns this now, sir. There's documentation. The words tasted like ashes in my mouth. I looked up at those two men. Miller, the older one with a mustache that said he's seen it all, and Ryan, who looked like he just graduated from cop school. Ryan kept tapping his flashlight, impatient as a woodpecker, saying he didn't need to hear my life story. But the life story mattered. My grandfather homesteaded this place in 1943, building the lake with his bare hands, a shovel, and borrowed money back when the only HOA was the neighbor who'd help you fence in your cows, not charge you for putting up a flagpole. But none of that mattered to the HOA. They'd filed a municipal complaint, the officer said. Property lines had changed. Some development had happened. Suddenly the lake was community recreational property. I tried to argue, but Officer Ryan told me I could pack up voluntarily or spend the night in county lockup. So I packed angry, confused, humiliated, every tent stake coming out of the earth like it was giving up too. And all the while, Miller kept glancing at me with something like sympathy, warning me to keep everything buttoned up tight, like he knew just how ugly these HOA fights could get. I drove home in the dark, my headlights sweeping across those old, familiar roads, feeling like a ghost passing through someone else's life. My house, my grandfather's house, sat there silent and solid, holding 70 years of memories. I didn't even take my boots off. I went straight to the basement where the air smells like dust and old paper, and started digging through file boxes, records, surveys, tax documents, anything that could prove what I knew in my bones: this land was ours. It took all night, but I found what I needed. The original survey map, hand-drawn in 1943, letters my grandfather wrote to the county asking for conservation status, so the lake would be protected for wildlife and future generations. Tax records unbroken every year showing Northwood family ownership. Receipts, contracts with local farmers, faded photos of Grandpa Jasper, sleeves rolled up, standing in a hole he'd dug with nothing but hope and grit. Pictures of my father as a toddler holding his first base. All proof that every inch of this place had been earned, never given. I remember Grandpa Jasper telling me once, standing knee-deep in the lake cleaning a fish with those big scarred hands, "Land teaches you who you are, boy, but don't let anybody steal what honest sweat earned." He meant it. He'd come out of Oklahoma during the Dust Bowl, running from land that had died, determined to make this patch of prairie live. He fought for it, and so would I. So armed with my stack of dusty evidence, I marched into the HOA office the next morning. The place smelled like burnt coffee and cheap carpet. I asked to see Serafina Maddox, the new HOA president, who probably spends more on hairspray than my granddad spent building the dock. She came out all perfect and polished, shook my hand with a smile that didn't reach her eyes. I laid out my proof, told her the lake was Northwood land built by my family. She barely glanced at my papers before dismissing them. "Feelings don't trump legal proof, Mr. Northwood. The lake and grounds were transferred to community management in 2018. She pulled out her own folder, thick as a brick, with architectural drawings for a new lakeside amenity package, pavilions, boat launches, concrete everywhere, $15,000 assessments for every household. She said it all so matter-of-fact, like bulldozing my family's legacy for a clubhouse was progress. I kept pushing back. I told her about the environmental protections, the tax records, the conservation status. She just smiled cool, patronizing, told me that modern zoning regulations and community standards supersede old claims that change can be difficult for older residents and that fighting would be expensive, maybe even devastating for someone on a fixed income. Yeah, she'd done her homework. She knew I was a retired vet living on savings, but she didn't know who she was dealing with. On my way out, I ran into my neighbor, a retired county engineer. He pulled me aside, told me he'd seen plenty of these HOA takeovers, and handed me a thin file, copies of altered property records, signatures that didn't match, environmental approvals rushed through in weeks, not months. "This looks like fraud," I whispered, feeling the adrenaline kick in. He nodded. "They don't just ruin finances, Beckett. They ruin reputations, destroy careers, make life hell for anyone who stands up. If you want to fight, you'll need help, someone at the county level outside their reach." He was right. This was bigger than one man and a lake. This was a pattern properties with lakes, woods, or hunting value quietly reclassified and transferred to the HOA's control, then handed off to developers. The paper trail was there if you knew where to look. And I had allies, old-timers, who remembered a county archivist who'd been watching, waiting for someone to ask the right questions. Within a few days, we'd pieced it together. Original conservation easements quietly erased from digital records. Federal protection orders purged signatures. Forged fat payments flowing from development corporations to HOA board members, all disguised as consulting fees. Serafina Maddox, the queen bee herself, had pocketed over $200,000 last year while pretending she was just a volunteer. But they didn't stop at the paperwork. The HOA ran a full smear campaign, posted online that I was some dangerous vagrant trespassing on community property. The grocery store manager wouldn't let me in. My pharmacy suddenly had insurance complications. Even my barber canceled my appointments. It was like someone flipped a switch and my whole world turned against me. Then they fired my daughter, said her liability was too great because of my legal situation. She came home crying, a cardboard box in her arms. "Dad, is it really worth it? It's just a piece of land, right?" She was hurting, and that hurt me more than anything the HOA had done. But I couldn't give up. Not just for me, for Grandpa Jasper, for my father, for my daughter. If I surrendered, I'd be teaching her that bullies win, that power and money matter more than truth. The final piece came late at night in a dusty parking lot by the old grain elevator. The county archivist handed me a folder. Original federal documents, letters with government seals, environmental designations for our lake legal orders that made the HOA's development plans not just theft, but a federal crime. And taped to the back a recording voices of the HOA president and a county official calmly discussing how to escalate pressure, destroy reputations, even fabricate criminal charges to silence opposition. You ever hear your own life, your daughter's future discussed like pieces on a chessboard? That's when it gets real. That's when the fear turns to cold, hard steel. I took all that evidence, every map, every photo, every letter, and walked right into the emergency HOA meeting. 200 residents, the president in her throne at the front, ready to sell our lake for a 15% boost in property values. She tried to paint me as the problem, a crank, a troublemaker stuck in the past. But when I played the recording, when I laid out the federal orders, the bank statements, the environmental law, they'd broken, the whole room changed. You could see it in their faces. The whispers turned to outrage. And when the county archivist stood up, trembling but brave, and confirmed it all, even the true believers in the crowd realized they'd been used. Federal investigators came 3 weeks later, 12 arrests, including Serafina and her developer husband. The county officials who'd helped were charged too. My neighbor, the engineer who risked everything to help, was cleared and made the new HOA president. The neighborhood passed new bylaws, real protections, not just for the land, but for any resident standing up for what's right. The best part: the county restored the conservation easement, designated the lake a protected heritage site, forever safe from progress. My daughter got her job back with an apology and a raise. And one crisp autumn morning, we went fishing together, 3 generations of Northwoods alive in the sound of the line hitting water. I always thought the lesson was about land, about holding on to what your grandfather built. But after all this, I think it's about legacy, about refusing to let fear or money erase what matters. Justice takes time, sometimes too long, but when it comes, it washes everything clean. So, what would you do if the people in power tried to erase your family's legacy? Is it worth losing comfort, friends? Even your reputation to stand up for what's right? Or is there a line where you'd say, enough, it's just land? Drop your thoughts below, share your stories about fighting for what matters. And let's talk about where we draw that line between progress and preservation, between justice and just getting by. If this story struck a nerve, hit like, subscribe, and share your own battles for what's right. Because the fight for justice is never just about one person. It's about all of us standing together when it matters most.